When we look at the Winter War, we usually talk about the high combat effectiveness and tenacity of the Finns, as well as various Soviet blunders. Yet what rarely gets a mention is the role of Germany. I knew already that Germany was rather absent during the Winter War, yet until recently I was not aware how much the German leadership actually threw Finland under the bus. Hitler would do nothing at this point to jeopardize the arrangement, the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact. Thus, when the Soviets attacked Finland in November 1939, starting the so-called Winter War, Berlin provided no help to Helsinki, despite its appeals, though the Italians considered sending aid. Already before the Winter War, the German leadership went several times out of its way to avoid violating the Molotov-Ribbentrop pact. For instance, furthermore, Blücher, a German diplomat at the time, was ordered to discourage ex-president Svinhufvud from making a trip to Berlin to ask for assistance. Svinhufvud's pro-German sentiments were well known, and the Reich wished to avoid any embarrassment that his presence in Berlin would have caused while the critical talks were progressing in Moscow. Ribbentrop ended his communiqué with the phrase that had become his guideline to the situation: Germany is not concerned with Russo-Finnish problems. When a Swedish industrialist visited Germany, he talked to Hitler. The Führer told him, Sven Hedin, a Swedish industrialist and explorer, that Germany would continue its present policy of neutrality towards the north, and he believed that the Soviet demands on Finland were justifiable. Hitler seemed piqued on the anti-Nazi feeling in the north, and he felt that Finland had not been properly appreciative of the assistance that Germany had given it in 1918. It is important to remember that Finnish independence was supported by the Germans, which already in 1915 had begun to raise the Finnish Legion in order to weaken the Russian Empire and incite a national revolution in Finland. A Finnish light infantry battalion fought on the Eastern Front in 1916-17, which later swore an oath to the Finnish government. Many members of the Finnish military elite were part of this battalion. As late as the end of June 1939, the German chief of the General Staff, Franz Halder, had visited the Finnish army. He was impressed by the anti-Russian mood and the willingness to join forces with the Germans. As such, when the Soviets threatened Finland, the Finns turned towards Germany. Remembering how Germany had actively supported them in the War of Independence 20 years earlier, as late as October 1939, the Finnish leadership expressed optimism that Hitler would intervene in this conflict too and prevent harm from reaching the Finnish people. Once the Winter War started, Germany changed its position, although in a more pro-Soviet one. Germany did nothing to alter its stand of complete indifference to Finland once the war had begun. If anything, the Reich's Foreign Office developed an even more decided pro-Soviet line in order to allay any possible Russian suspicions. Germany's strategy was mostly driven by keeping out the Allied volunteers from the conflict, or even better, the whole region, because it was assumed those would occupy vital parts of Norway, like the port of Narvik, which is vital for the transporting Swedish iron ore. This would also set in motion the planning for Operation Weserübung, the later invasion of Denmark and Norway. During the war, the Germans went so far as to note that the Soviets performed a natural ratification of the borders. When the Finns approached the Germans to help out with negotiations, the answer was again a simple no. Finland had also requested that Germany and Sweden use their good offices in order to approach the Soviets for possible terms of negotiation settlement. Germany replied with its now characteristic no, and the Soviet Union still continued to assert that it would not negotiate with a government it no longer recognized. It is particularly notable that virtually every nation in the world, with the notable exception of Germany, voiced its support for the Finnish cause. The Finns during and after the Winter War felt abandoned by Western powers. Yet to a certain degree this lack of support was also the result of Germany disallowing the transit of shipments and volunteers through its territory. Germany, citing the Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement, which was not an overt military alliance, refused to permit the transshipment of arms through German ports, effectively cutting off such commerce from Italy, a nation more eager to support the Finns. It is important to remember here that at the time Poland did not exist anymore and was occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union. Furthermore, these restrictions were not limited to German territory, by the way. Although the Western Allies offered to send help to Finland, Sweden denied these troops passage through northern Sweden because it would violate Swedish neutrality and jeopardize relations with Germany. I also found a source that noted that the Germans supported Finland with rifles and ammo for a short time. Although Germany supported Finland with rifles and ammunition for a short time in secret, as reported by Mussolini's Minister of Foreign Affairs, it had to stop when a Swedish journalist leaked the news and Hitler's non-aggression pact with Stalin came into question. The Russians would likely have discovered the German deliveries of weapons eventually, anyway, even without the help of Swedish journalists. I could not verify this information. On Wikipedia it is noted that this was actually not German arms, but that the Germans allowed arms to pass through initially, whereas other sources note that Italy wanted to provide fighter planes to Finland. This resulted in Molotov protesting to Ribbentrop, who then noted that the Germans withdrew their consent for the deliverance of these fighter planes after the Winter War had started. Additionally, basically all the other actions from Germany I came across indicate that German arms deliveries seem very unlikely unless they were conducted by rogue actors. For instance, in protocols of the Supreme Commander of the Kriegsmarine with Adolf Hitler, it is noted on the 5th of December 1939, incidents of Russian naval warfare against Finland, sinking of individual German steamers, settled. Russians now respect German flag. Agreement on German ore steamer for Lulea under negotiation. This is likely a reference to the sinking by a Soviet submarine. Meanwhile, Soviet submarines operated from Tallinn and Libya, eventually sinking one German and one Estonian steamer. Let us stay with the Soviet submarines for a moment. In December 1939, the Soviets requested that the German steamers should supply Soviet submarines with food and fuel. The Kriegsmarine recommended undertaking the measure and Hitler gave his approval. The Germans began the necessary preparations, but the Soviets also cancelled this request before the Germans acted. Now, I must add here, the Winter War source situation is not the best, yet I find it rather odd that this aspect is basically completely ignored, especially since I got many questions over the years why the Allies did not declare war on the Soviet Union when it attacked Poland. Interestingly enough, I think nobody ever asked why the Germans were a bunch of towards Finland during the Winter War. For completeness, it should be added that the Allied interests to intervene on the side of the Finns were also mostly driven by self-interest as well. The Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs from December 1939 to March 1940, Tanner's evaluation of this situation caused him to say, "On this basis, Finland assumed a pretty dubious attitude. He realized that Finland was being used as an excuse to help the Allies secure more important military targets." The result of the Winter War was that Finland lost large parts of Karelia. Additionally, an important base in the Baltic Sea had to be leased to the Soviets as well. The Finns never really accepted the peace treaty. This is also related to the fact that the Finnish population was unaware of the dire situation of the Finnish army. Well, I hope you have now a better knowledge and understanding of Germany's role in the Winter War. Thank you to Andrew for reviewing the script. If you like what you see, consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar. Big thanks to all of you who already do or did support me there. As always, sources are listed in the description. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.